Hello, hello. What to do with this? Hello. So, uh, my first life in this setup. So, I thought of doing something around the career development for women, and especially if you are when you live abroad. So, the International Women's Day is approaching, and I was asked to provide some insights for a company around the career development for women, share some tips and my insights. And I thought maybe this is something I can do a live on as well, and maybe some of you will find it useful. I don't think my career was in any shape or form spectacular, given especially my age, but I think it was rather decent given my accent, as they used to say. So I'm from Poland, but I lived in the UK for 12 years, and last year I've moved to Sweden. And I thought of doing the following. I thought of sharing my career journey, if you like, how I got from my very first job in the UK when I was processing invoices to be HR business partner for technology, and now having my own company. And I want to start, but I want to start with owning to my own privileges, and then give you those insights and wrap it up with some takeaways and reflections on how the career, what are the possible challenges and what may work for us if we are from a diverse background, and especially if you are women. So, and especially, okay, I probably have to comment on that, especially when we are women, because I'm a woman myself. And the more I dig into the research on the gender and the women in the workplaces, the more I can appreciate the challenges that we sometimes came across. But there are some benefits too. Okay, so let's start with me owning to my privileges. I think it's important to acknowledge that. My first one will be, of course, my race. I was only once stopped by police because of my race, and that was in the USA in 2002. I used to do. I worked in during summer holidays in 2002. There was a program called Work and Travel. Um, I was there with my now husband, so this is how long we've been together, and we used to work for the summer holidays in Las Vegas. And once we were going back from work to home, and we were renting a very cheap apartment, a studio apartment, let's say um, part of in the cheaper part of Las Vegas. So as we were walking back home, a police stopped and they said, "You're going the wrong directions. You have to come back. You have to come back. Strip is over there." So the main street with all the entertainments and the hotels. And we're no, no, no. We're going the right directions. They were like, "You don't understand. You're going to the wrong directions. Don't go there." And we're like, "No, we are renting an apartment there. We're going. We know where we're going to." And they were like, "Okay, I guess you can go then." And it's a simple example, but it really, it was obvious that the only reason they stopped was our race, and that's it. And uh, and and this goes, and this experience translates into our experience at work as well. My other privilege, I think, that one of the biggest one is where I was born, my family, and my education. So I was born in Wrocław, which is a wonderful city in Poland, one of the biggest ones in Poland, and it's probably better. And it's university city. You can feel the spirit of student life, I guess, and it also has very interesting history. Actually, the city used to be German, but after the Second World War, the borders moved from eastern borders moved to the more towards the west. So people who lived in eastern cities, for example, Lviv or Vilna, which are now in today's Ukraine and Lithuania, the whole populations were relocated, and the same the whole population from Breslau, so from Wrocław, German population was relocated to Germany. And I think I did my experience of living in a city who had that kind of history is growing up in appreciation of the previous generations, and how appreciation of how vulnerable things can be, and that we can't take things for granted, and appreciation to people who were before us. And but coming back to the privileges bit, both of my parents are educated, and they worked and they made their career in the education. So one thing that I always took for granted was that I would have a master degree. It was obvious since I was a child, I guess. So I did get my master's. In Poland, we don't pay for university, so honestly, I just had to study, and that was it, with no pressures, no challenges. All I had to do was to study. I had friends, colleagues who were from smaller towns, for example, and they really had to think about how they can support themselves and study and achieve that. And I just had it really, really easy. I think too easy almost. So anyway, this meant that when I moved to the UK in 2008, I didn't move because of financial pressures. I actually had my own company in Poland before relocating. I was providing cross-culture training and consulting and that kind of stuff. So when I moved to the UK, I moved because once I was following my husband, and there is a theme for that. But two, I thought, let's take it as a career growth opportunity. Let's take it as an opportunity to grow and learn and improve my English. Why not? Let's have a little bit of an adventure. There was none of this was related to my economical future or needing money to support my family back at home, which I know happens for many other immigrants. So it was very comfortable, actually. And my husband already had a job in the UK, so all those kind of stuff was taken care of, and I just had to look for a job. And when I look for a job, because I speak Polish, English, and Italian, I just typed in jobs, Polish, English, Italian, and I found a position in Kellogg's in Manchester. They were luckily looking for people who would speak those languages, and that was in accounts payable. So that was in financial services, I guess. The role was about processing invoices. Nothing wrong about processing invoices, but now I know I've got ADHD, and I've mentioned that before. That's not the best jobs for people with ADHD. So I would make some mistakes, I remember. So the role in itself wasn't that great, but I think it was a great first job to get myself comfortable working in the UK. The whole team was either international, or they were my British colleagues who would speak other languages and who would live abroad before. So they have the understanding of how it is to speak, to use to speak the language that is not your first language. So it was, I think, I really appreciate that experience. And I've mentioned in one of my videos about the difference between validation kind of environment and the valid environment. And I think my colleagues and my managers back then did a really, really good job, because we all ended up having the job that we had because we spoke the languages, but we not necessarily wanted, that wasn't our choice, our career choice as such. Otherwise, it was, a first job in many, many instances. So we really work together to make this job interesting and play to our strengths and have our what we call now champions. Like I, for example, I love data analytics. So I was looking at the team metrics, and I also did a report for one of the processes with the improvement recommendations. So there was a lot of other stimuli, shall I say, to make the job interesting. And it's actually really great to see how our careers have progressed for many of us since. So we all took our own paths, but many of our careers were flourishing ever since. So that was a very, very good first experience. I then, after a year, long story short, we worked in different cities, me and my husband, and the commute was taking a toll. So I just felt I may as well try the trick again. Say, put in jobs, Polish, English, Italian, and this time I found one in the city my husband worked at that time. So that was Leeds, and this time it was. And again, someone was looking for people who would speak Polish, English, Italian at the same time. So perfect combination. And I was a customer service rep. So at that time, I would be processing orders instead of the invoices. So again, repetitive task, but again, it was a very international team. We all were either foreigners or again British colleagues who would speak different languages or who would have lived abroad before as well. So if I think that for your first job in the UK or abroad, if you are in those international teams, it's just easier because we share the experience, even if we are from different cultures. Even if the challenge in the office was that the classic one that for some of us it was too hot, when for some other ones it was too cold at the same time. So too hot and too cold. But we may have not shared the same culture, but or eat the same food or drink the same drinks, hot drinks, but we would share the experience of how it actually is to live abroad. So um, that made it easy. I think that made it much easier to start working abroad. So I can highly recommend that. I can highly recommend starting in the international teams. So what happened there? I would say what I did, and now I know, and I had other videos on that. I did job crafting, so I didn't know it was job crafting back then, but basically I would make my role more interesting. So again, I would run some reports for the organization. Just I was very proactive at that. How about I'm going to look at the customers' orders or returns and see for some correlations or how can we improve the process. I've done some process improvements as well, how we can work more effectively between departments, and so on. So I was very proactive. I was doing it simply because I like to make my job more interesting and play to my strengths. So I've just done it. But what it did, and I think that's going to be my first tip, I guess, is I got myself visibility. So whilst I'm not a natural person who would be selling myself, and I know it's ironic if I'm doing my own business, it's a big struggle for me. Anyways, I'm not that kind of person in that sense. But by being proactive, by networking with others, it got me visibility with the general manager, and and suddenly the general manager was coming to me for some advice, or definitely the additional work I was doing have been noticed positively. And then I was assigned a bigger project with more responsibility, working with there was a project that required me to work with lawyers. That was something to do with the products that we had, go through the from the accreditation, some kind of accreditation process. Never mind. I was trusted with a big project, some more extra responsibility, and so what I'm trying to say is, if you are waiting to be seen without being a little bit more proactive or creating those opportunities for ourselves, we may be disappointed. So I guess that's one of the things that it's worth bearing in mind. We have to kind of knock on those doors step by step. It doesn't have to be anything overwhelming. Starting with what you're interested in, and And it's not that I knew I wanted to do HR straight away. Like, I've studied sociology, I did cross cultural training before. So by all means, it was always on the radar. But it's not that like I came to the organization and said, I want to do HR. It was more organic in my case. And of course, it may not be for you. You may have a very clear career path and you may follow it, and that's fantastic. But what I'm trying to say is that when we follow our interest, our our curiosity, it can take us eventually to something more tangible or something more defined for us. So it definitely worked for me, and I've seen this working for others as well. So I've done that project, and when the end of the review, end of the year review came, I've actually asked the general manager. I said, if there was an opportunity to work in HR, I would love an opportunity to do so. I kind of planted the seeds, and it paid off because until now they were actually considering introducing HR. For the context, it was international organization, but it was a smaller organization, and they had HR. They had the HR function was in the USA, so all the language policies and stuff like that were given from the USA, but in the UK it was just locally. All the HR activities were spread between different managers and different people in the organization. So, for example, if there was recruitment, the relevant manager was looking after recruitment. If there was, I don't know, a contract update, someone in the administration would be doing that, and so on and so on and so on. So, opportunity arose, and actually they said, yes, you can do HR. So, my first role was HR coordinator. That was my title, and that's how I started my standalone HR role. I am very, very grateful to my manager, and I have to say it. And again, I'm going to link to what I'm calling validation and valid mindset. If we are in the validation mindset, we're just looking at, so like if you are a manager if with what I call validation mindset, it's all about you have a task and you're matching the person to the task, and that's it. It's not looking beyond beyond that, beyond seeing a person for the potential, for the strength, and what else they can bring to the table. With the valid mindset, for me, it's about making it valid to the individual, to the manager, and to the organization, and being able to look beyond the obvious, beyond the tasks. I feel like my then manager, and she's done it not only with me. She had this ability to see the people she was working with and spot and appreciate the potential or the strengths, and craft the roles to make it work for both. And it was nothing fluffy. Like, she could set the standards really high and set the expectations, but at the same time give us the space to grow and to do our own as well. It was perfect. It was perfect. It was really, really good. I'm really grateful that that's how I started my role. I felt it worked for me and works for them. And I was supported with the training course with the it's called CAPD, so HR qualification. I've worked with a professional organization that we did a project together on the organizational culture and values and leadership development, and we also had the employment law specialist supporting me whenever I needed it, and they also did some training courses and seminars and stuff like that. So it wasn't just throwing me into the deep end, but it was learning together. And what I really liked, my manager then said at one point, she told me that she, until she started working with me on HR, she actually fully appreciated that HR is more, that there is so much more to HR than just policies and, an employment law, that she actually saw the value of it after working with me, and us growing together on that journey, shall I say it. So yeah, so I'm very, very grateful, and I don't know if I would be today if that wasn't for her and for that opportunity. And perhaps I could have created, and I'm hoping that I would have created myself an opportunity elsewhere as well. But that was very, very good for me. After that, I've spent there over 5 years. So I became a HR specialist, and I also worked with somebody else, and later on as well. So it was a team of two that that we had. So yeah, it was good. It was good, great experience. Very grateful for that. In the meantime, my husband was moved from the Leeds to Chester, and I had to resign. Sadly, it was before COVID, so working remotely was not. Sorry, I have to take tea. Working remotely was not an option, unfortunately. Unfortunately, but in the same time, fortunately as well. Obviously, having the benefit of the hindsight. So you moved to the Chester, and then I got the job. Um, I got a job in. It was hard actually to find a job because I came across, meaning it was hard and wasn't hard. It's not that I spent lots of time looking for job. I did got the job, but it was a little bit harder in the sense of I had an experience. I had tangible results I delivered, but the organization was on the smaller end. It was international, but it was smallish. So I would hear that either industry is not the same, or that the company wasn't big enough, or the team was too small, or this or that. There was always something. But eventually I got the job, and that's the period when I started. This is the period when I started being on the temporary contracts only, which, when we look at the statistics, and I don't want to go too much into the detail, but women, and at that time I had small children, very small children. So um, and the women, especially in the UK, when the childcare cost is really, really high, and I'm going to be jumping ahead, but getting a job there meant that my salary wasn't enough to cover for the nursery for two children and my commute to work. It was actually, it was better for me not to work than to work, but I love working, and I knew it was my transition period. So then I'm starting being on the different either maternity cover contracts or temporary contracts of some nature. So there I was only for 5 months. There was a sausage factory, which is interesting because I'm a vegetarian, but I worked there. That was a very good experience to go back to work and work in a factory environment. It made me appreciate a lot of things, shall I say. It really made me appreciate, and my privilege as well. But that may be for a different topic. And after that, I was actually was headhunted by a great company in. They were in Warrington at that time. Doesn't matter. Um, I was actually contacted proactively by the recruiter there, and um, I became a HR advisor for a company in the tech sector, which is a great experience. Again, really great team. Um, Mature organization, quite mature organizations going through interesting change programs. So I've learned a lot, and I've really appreciated that a lot, a lot, a lot. So, but that was a maternity cover contract. Oh, by the way, since I moved from Leeds to Chester, that was when I stopped putting in the job search Polish, English, Italian. I only ever looked for jobs with HR in it, so that was great. So I moved there, and then there was a that was a maternity cover contract as well, and then I found a job closer to my home for another tech company with more HR projects in it. So I've moved to another one, and I became HR business partner for technology. That was an amazing, amazing experience. I appreciate a lot. And if my colleagues listen to that, and if I mean, I appreciate that. Um, so yeah, so that was great. And again, when I come to my work and when I come to my roles, I bring my strength in, my interest, and my passion in, and that's quite distinctive. People know what I'm all about. They also know when I'm less good at. But um, I think the biggest testimony I have is when I can see people grow and transform, and when I can see organization grow and transform. And I had in all those roles I worked for, I had those moments of a real transformation for individuals or for departments or for teams, or even for the organization. So that's super valuable, and that's very tangible as well. So what does it take us to? And then yeah, and then finally, so I've worked there, I've gained amazing experience. Working for tech taught me a new ways of thinking as well about how we work, what's agile ways of working, test, build, continuous improvement, um, challenging our ways of thinking, challenging each other, presenting to the audience in a way that they're gonna listen to you, when at the beginning they may not want to or be interested. So that was really good. But also there were some challenges for me. So I've mentioned ADHD. So if you work in tech, and whenever we did something like strength scope, or recognizing your strengths, I would always be on the opposite end of the spectrum, because people would be traditionally or mainly high in the attention to detail, in the common sense, and very pragmatic way of approaching work. I'm not saying I don't have a common sense, but my strengths would be more on the bigger picture, on the what's the opposite of detail oriented? Yeah, the bigger picture, and um, the values, and very future oriented. So um, I guess my challenge wasn't necessarily with not being understood because of my English, but not being understood because my ways of thinking would be different. But I've once were asked one of the senior leaders in tech for feedback, and some of the things that he said was that um, that I was able to challenge them, bring new perspectives, and look at the situation or an issue from a completely different angle, which is a great feedback to hear. And I knew that was appreciated. So I can actually, on that note, asking for feedback is a good thing. I've in every single place I've worked for, I would be really paying attention to what I can learn from others. This brings me to the topic of. Mm, role models. I do believe in the role models concept, that you can take something from somebody. Like there are aspects of somebody's ways of being or working or thinking that can resonate with you or can be useful to you, and take bits from people and combine it into one. So um, I recommend that way of looking, of interacting with others and learning from others, and looking for your role models. So this is what happens when I go unscripted. Not that I would go very scripted in other videos, but what I wanted to say is, after working there, I've then decided to set up my own company, to focus, really to really play to my strengths, to really play to my strengths, to my interest, my passion, which is diversity and inclusion and leadership development, like manager support, colleagues growth, and career development. So I decided to go on my own, which isn't the easiest thing ever, especially when you ended up doing it during COVID, which obviously I didn't know before that this is what it would be. But again, what seems to be really working well for me are the connections and the interactions I made before, because that network really helped me to go through the 2020, and it means that what I've provided to people before had been useful to them, had been valid to me and to them. So I didn't have to validate myself as a as a person who does tasks, but I could bring value and make it value to me and to those around me. So, um, so that's a quick overview. What I really appreciate is one. So you've mentioned that I had so sorry. So looking at my career development, first I have a little bit of what's called job hopping. This job hopping was because the easiest way for me to find jobs was to be having contract. Interestingly enough, whenever I had in all of those roles, when I have only temporary contract, every time it ended up to be either extended or made permanent. But I just decided to move on for other reasons. So and the job hopping was because of it wasn't because of me. It was because of my particular situation and opportunities I have had. I also lived in Cheshire, so it wasn't the most populated or the most like the main centers would be Manchester or eventually Liverpool. With but it, all of them required commute, and I had small children, so it's not that there were opportunities everywhere. But because I've job hopped and I worked for different industries, I've worked with a variety of managers and leaders and colleagues, and I've been exposed to a lot. I've been exposed to a lot. So this is a very valuable experience I've gained from every single place. And also, I guess it helped me learn to be more resilient and more adaptive to the environments and people I would be working with, because it's it's very, I do like the state when you work in an organization for some um, significant amount of time, when you know people, when you can use that to your advantage by all means, and you know who to ask for help, you know how to influence. It's easier, but at the same time, because I had to change the roles, I had to really adapt quickly and learn what's the organization all about, what are the aims, what are the characters, what's the culture, and how I can operate and be most effective in that environment, was very, very valuable, especially when I'm doing the work I'm doing now, where I'm not in-house HR, so I don't have the benefits of knowing all the nitty-gritty and understand how to swim in the water. You really have to think on your feet and be able to adapt. So I very much appreciate that. And again, mm, what I think had been very useful having that experience, what's specific to me about having that career growth from the position of being a foreigner, especially a foreigner from Poland. I think it matters. We like to think we are Central Europeans, no, we are Eastern Europeans, and it comes with a weight to it, even if it's self-imposed. They think that taught me a couple of things. One, there are lots of things I can't take for granted. I can't take for granted people would, especially back then, that people would understand me, that they would like to listen to me. I can't take for granted that when I need help, I can just call for my parents, go to the house, or call my friends. Go even something like when you first arrive to a new country or a new city, everything is alien, so you have to find your way around and make your new memories with the places. And being raised in one city and having lived in Wrocław for such a long time, it was just very comfortable. It was just very comfortable, and but I really appreciate the fact that I've been challenged and I challenged myself and went out of my comfort zone so many times. Because interestingly enough, my daughter, who's going to be 7 this year, um, so she has parents from Poland. She and her brother were born in the UK. Then last year we've moved them to Sweden, and there's always an opportunity, a possibility of us living elsewhere, and we kind of discussing different opportunities. And when we said that maybe this is where we're going to stay for longer, she's like, "Are we? No, we need to change. We need to experience more things." It's just for her, like changing and moving places. That's her new normal, and I'm happy for that. It's just gonna hopefully makes things easier for them in life when things can't be taken for granted. Um, so that's definitely the benefit, the agility, the resilience that can come with it. On the other hand, it can be frustrating at times. On the other hand, the more you see, the more you know more, the more the more you can create, but also the more it can frustrate you. So by all means, I had my own challenges with what being a female. I had my challenges with leaders asking my main manager for approval of my words. Like, all they needed to know is if my main manager would agree with me, then they would agree with me as well. But otherwise, if it was coming just from me, wouldn't always be as valid as if that was with the men's approval. I do have it's hard to put a finger on some certain things, but some of the challenges I had were coming from me as well. Like, I was very always aware of English not being my first language, and worrying that people would not understand me or would not want to listen to me. And today, when I'm recording these videos, I very often second guess myself. Maybe I should have been doing this in English. Maybe that's the right thing. So, and being Eastern Europeans comes with some descriptions of some sort. So I wouldn't say I had massive challenges with that, but I always ask, and I observe. I always ask myself if there are certain situations when it's just impossible for these questions not to come to your head. If you were of a different gender, or if you were of a different nationality, or if you had a different last name, if things wouldn't be a little bit easier for you in many ways. But to wrap it up, the challenges that I had were helpful. Um, and it helped me grow my own resilience, my own confidence. I've gathered a lot of very valuable experience, and it helped me to be adapted. I don't want to go too much into what being authentic self means, but I think the way I view being my authentic self at work was meant that um, I always stick to my values, and people would always know what I am all about, what are my core values and what are my core strengths, and people would know what kind of advice or help or insight they may get from me. Like being, challenge the thinking, look at the different perspectives, grow professionally, or help them have those courageous conversations, that kind of stuff, and anything to do with diversity and inclusion, of course. And that's always clear. That was always clear, but I would always try to adapt my style, myself, to the person I had in front of me, and I think that was important and useful, um, and um, and also what my experience and my challenges taught me were that there is a plan B, and then I have to be patient. I have to give people time and space to get to know me and see how I can be valid to them. And one of my secret weapons or tools in my toolkit were, instead of imposing things on people would be asking them questions. That was something that worked for me, and that was something that I didn't have to go through a confidence training of that such, to pretend to be somebody I wasn't, for example. But sometimes asking the right question in the right moment mm, was was very powerful, more powerful than me saying what I thought. So there's always a plan B. There are challenges, um, and the more you study, the more the subject, the more you understand and appreciate them. And maybe maybe it's not good to know it all. I'm kidding a little bit. No, I think awareness is important, but it also helps us. Helps us adapt and find a way. If not this way, another. I would encourage you to do it. Follow your interest. Be curious. Do what you love. I know it sounds like a coach. Do what you love. Do what you're interested in. You don't have to start big, but do try to explore more and network with others, because you never know how it can pay you off. Okay, that's it of my free flow talking. I hope some of this has been useful for anyone. And I would really love to hear your comments and your experience. Thank you for listening, and take care. Have a great career development.